Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. This video is going to be about my 1999 323i. It's not quite a 323 anymore. This whole subframe assembly was a huge amount of work. It was a lot of labor hours, a number that I haven't calculated, but it was so satisfying to do. I actually filmed this in December of 2020 and January of 2021 and didn't finish it until just a few months ago when the rest of my parts showed up. COVID back orders are to blame for that. So all this video that was filmed and edited almost a year ago is finally done, and I wanted to share it with you guys. Enjoy. This is my 1999 BMW 323IS. Swapped in a 2.8 liter, I manual swapped it, wrapped it yellow, did brakes, coilovers, suspension, and the car's been perfect ever since. But now it's time for a little more power. Over the next couple months, the car's going big turbo, which means that stock rear end with 20-year-old bushings, it's not going to cut it anymore. So I figured it was time to take care of that. These subframes are actually really modular and pretty easy to pull from the car as a whole. I like to start with everything that's really obvious. The wheels, exhaust, the rear shocks, the drive shaft, and I keep picking away from there. I'm going to be zinc plating my hardware throughout this whole project, so organization was really key. So I bagged, tagged, and plated everything, including all the connectors to make sure I didn't confuse anything. After every connector had been removed, pushed out of the way, and the brake lines were disconnected, this rear end was ready to come out. Shelby was a little late to help as usual. That's okay. I was by myself this evening, so some roller dollies and an engine hoist, and this was up on a table where I could see what 20 years had done to this rear end. Being a Florida car, all the parts are completely rust-free, which is quite the treat for being someone who lives up in Canada.
Disassembling this rear end is really straightforward. I was just really careful to bag and tag everything correctly. All the bigger pieces were laid out on plates, which is going to be really helpful later on when I start zinc coating, because I had to ensure that a plastic bag wasn't touching freshly coated parts. So these foam plates actually came in really handy. If you're going to tackle these trailing arm bushings, I'd highly recommend buying the correct tooling for it. I tried to make do with some random roll cage tubing that I had, and I spent nearly an entire day on 4 bushings. Definitely buy the correct tooling before you tackle this job. It was not worth it. But this is YouTube, so I'm going to make it look like I tackled this in no time.
E36 rear subframes are notoriously weak at the sway bar pickup points, so I'm welding in sway bar reinforcements from conduit. After grinding away at these parts for over a full day, I was finally ready to prime them. I used a very strong metal etching primer, and I was really happy with how they turned out. I painted the parts in a Porsche gray metallic, a color that I loved in person and thought, yeah, that'll look good on the bottom side of my car. The diff was easily the most work of any of these parts to prep. It was just so rusty. But I also painted this in a Porsche deep black metallic, and it turned out great.
This was probably one of my favorite parts of this whole process. This is zinc plating. It's the first time that I've ever done this. It was honestly reasonably easy to set up and not terribly expensive, and the results speak for themselves. There was 2 finishes that I could choose with this process. What you're watching right now is what's called yellow chromating. So it's taking a finished zinc bolt and chromating it, which is what gives it that yellow color. It's both an added barrier for rust and any kind of contamination in the future, and I personally just really love the finish and that nice gold tint that you get to it, like a lot of the classic Porsches. I was so happy with the final result of all the hardware. It was really the final piece. With a whole bunch of new parts, I basically just reversed the process from the beginning, except my parts looked a little different this time. Before putting everything back in, I did one of the most important things you have to do for these E36 chassis, and that's subframe reinforcements. They're basically just steel plates that reinforce the pickup points so that they don't break or crack in stress. And this is the partially finished final product, which brings us to today, almost a year and a half later, where I finally had all the parts after COVID back orders to finish this rear end. But do you remember that turbo kit that I talked about at the beginning of the video? Well, a year and a half later, the car looks a little different than it did 10 minutes ago. But that's for another video. It's going to take a little bit more than just a few seconds to walk through how carried away I got with this car. Thanks for watching, guys.